So the starting point, Jannik Sinner has received a 3-month ban for the drug clostebol, an illegal anabolic steroid. He had 2 positive tests back March 10th and March 18th, 2024. A few days later, he beat Grigor Dimitrov in the final of Miami 1000. Not just beat him, absolutely demolished him. He put this down to an accidental exposure from his physiotherapist who used a clostebol-containing spray to treat a hand injury and subsequently provided Sinner with bare-handed massages. Kind of hard to believe, and this is probably, I'll get to that point in a minute, but ultimately he got away with it originally. You know, they said that he didn't have any fault or negligence and imposed no suspension, but WADA, the World Anti-Doping Agency, disagreed with the tribunal and appealed for a punishment. We thought we were going to have a court case on April the 16th this year, and it came out a couple of days ago that the settlement has been reached. Again, wording not the best. They've ultimately agreed a 3-month ban effective from Feb the 9th to May the 4th. Now, a couple of things which I think are interesting. He misses 4 ATP Masters, Indian Wells, Miami, Monte Carlo, and Madrid. However, he will be back for the Rome Masters, which starts on May the 7th. Remember that date, because May 7th is important when we hear what we're about to hear. Now, Feb 9th to May 4th is not 3 months for a starting point. The other thing that we know, on Feb the 13th, Feb the 14th, Jannik Sinner was hitting tennis balls at the ATP tournament in Doha. When you receive a ban from the ATP or the WTA, you get everything's cancelled. You don't get any accreditation. You're not allowed on site. So technically, him being on the site at the ATP tournament in Doha practicing, really, if we're being fair, that 3 months should be moved back from that date. He is not going to miss a Grand Slam. It's obviously sent the tennis world into all sorts, and I'm sure everyone's got an opinion on this. But more than that, and probably sadder than that, is, I think about how I look at cycling with the Lance Armstrong issue, how I look at Formula One after the absolute farce of the Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton final day where they changed the rules. Those sports lost all credibility with me on those days, and I don't watch them anymore. I watch sport because I love the liveness, the passion, the energy, but I also love the fairness of it. And this doesn't, whichever way you look at it, this doesn't come across well. Now, this is a difficult one for me because Jannik Sinner is probably my favourite player as a person. I think he's a gentleman. I think he's very kind. He's obviously a great tennis player. I think he's great for the sport. I think he's normalised the sport in lots of ways, the way that he acts. I've had some lovely personal interactions with him. So for me, I don't want to be sitting here abusing Jannik Sinner on a personal side, and I'm absolutely not going to do that. However, we can't have confirmation bias in this. We have to look at this as objectively as we can. I know with certain court cases, there's subjectivity that comes into it, but when we're comparing this to pretty much every single drug anti-doping situation we've had in the tennis world, this doesn't add up. It's convenient. It's a coincidence. It fits. Iga Swiatek as well. I know it's a different story, but her ban came at a time where it didn't affect really any big tournaments. These players shouldn't have the power on that. There's obviously the big question mark. Why would you agree on a 3-month ban if you're not guilty? And that's the bit that I want to jump into, because there clearly is guilt here. There's negligence that has happened. And when negligence happens and guilt is there for such a high profile, we're talking about multi millions that Jannik Sinner is playing for. He's winning the biggest titles in the world. He's got the biggest endorsements in the world. And ultimately, someone's being negligent here. We're supposed to believe that 2 professionals, and namely Humberto Ferreira, who is now back in the game, as his physio, he's now Berrettini's physio. We're led to believe that it was the physio and the doctor that made human error. Not just one human error, 2, 3, 4 human errors that have led to this. Now, if Jannik Sinner is not responsible for that, then who is? And if he's not responsible for that, then you have to go back and say, well, okay. And I don't know Umberto, and I'm sure he's a lovely guy, but he's been removed from the Sinner camp 6 months after this happened, which causes a big question mark in my head. He's now back as Berrettini's physio, like nothing's gone. I'd like to know what his payoff was in this, that he's taken the fall. But he hasn't. If he's the one that's made this massive error and ultimately led to the number one tennis player in the world on the male side, doping, because that's what's happened. Doping has happened. It's very, very clear. This substance that has been put into Jannik Sinner's body is well known in Italy. There's over 80 athletes that have had positive drug tests on this same clostebol, and it says very clear on there. It's anti-doping. Do not use this. It's very clear on the packaging. So it's a monumental error. So if we are led to believe it's not Jannik Sinner, then surely there has to be a bigger fall there on that side. But ultimately, the margins are very small at the top end of the game. Jannik Sinner has ended with this in his body for whichever reason. I'm not here to say that he's done it on purpose. It's hard to believe that there was such errors, but maybe there was. So there was negligence that happened. Then I think this has to be treated a little bit differently than it has, and and I know there's people that will be saying, well, he's still losing out on 4 Masters 1000 events. That's nothing to Jannik Sinner. We've seen it. We've seen what he's won over the last couple of years. We'll see what he wins over the next couple of years. Him missing 4 Masters events, he's got away with this scot-free. Using the word agreement, settlement, not a good look for tennis. Already we've had people that are starting to speak. There's a lot of tennis players won't want to speak out, and understandably so, because they want to stick to what they do. However, we need some answers here from the ATP. We really do. This isn't, and the WTA. This is not something that can continue to happen, and it's this is not something that can continue to happen in our sport, and I'm concerned that this becomes a slippery slope. I'm concerned that the lower ranked players start saying, do you know what, screw this, we're going to cheat. The top players are cheating, so we'll cheat. It's okay to cheat. Becoming really cynical. Once you get a bad energy and you start having a lot of cynical people, and people starting to do things the way they want to just do things just out of spite, it's not a good place to be in. And I have big concerns on that. I'd like to see a longer ban. I'd like to see him miss, if I'm honest. I'd like to see him miss at least a couple of Grand Slams here. I really do. I think that's what it's about for Jannik Sinner right now. I think he needs to feel that. I'd like to see him come out and say sorry, and sorry to the tennis world on this. Ultimately, there's errors that have been made. I'm going to take my medicine. And I'd like for the ATP to come out and clarify some things a little bit, because you'll have people like Michael Imar who missed his 3 tests, which is very easy to do. And from what I understand from Michael Imar, he's a lovely kid who it's hard to update your whereabouts. And the way the whereabouts work is you've got to update every day to say where you're going to be. That's not easy for anyone to do in this life. So it's quite easy to miss 3 tests. He received a 12-month ban, I believe it was. Nobody's looking out for him. And there's many there's another Italian, younger, lower ranked Italian, I believe, got 2 years for the same clostebol as Jannik Sinner. There's a lot of these stories that are coming out and that leaves a bad taste in the mouth. So yeah, I'd like Jannik Sinner to come out and amend that in some way. I would like the ATP to come out and amend that in some way. And I think we have to get some form of objectiveness that's a little bit clearer, because we can't go down the route of player power. And player power, the richer you are, the more that you can then pick and agree what your ban is in a sport that's already worth millions at the top of the game. And whenever there's millions to be made in anything, don't forget this, and don't for 1 minute think this doesn't happen. When there's millions to be made in anything, and the gift or the reward is that high, people will push the boundaries. If it's pushing the boundaries or it's cheating, that's for you to decide. but that absolutely will happen. And I am a coach that works on the ATP Tour and WTA Tour. I don't know any of this for fact, but we've thought for the last 20, 30, 40 years that probably some people are pushing the boundaries. And I think it would be naive of us to think that they're not. And we've got to try and find a way of making sure that that's clean, it's fair for absolutely everybody. So look forward to hearing from the ATP WTA over the next few weeks, and let's learn from this, and let's make sure that this isn't the precedent that is being set for future.